understand the origin of evil, and understand how he's going to try and distract us. So we're going to take a little parenthesis. We do this in the Thessalonian. Paul is warning the church then. I would submit to you, he's warning us tonight that soon the man of sin, who is revealed as the son of perdition, will try to distract us from Christ. Then the man of sin who would be revealed, meaning the arch-apostate, also known as the Antichrist. Look at the characteristics with me from Thessalonians. He says he exalts himself above who? God. He sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Now, I have this in the notes, so we don't have to go through this in great detail, but a narcissistic personality disorder. If someone has, it's either 5 or 7, I forget the exact number, 5 or 7 of these characteristics, they are considered to be a narcissistic personality disorder. Now, I would submit to you this. The son of perdition, or excuse me, rather the son of perdition, the man of sin, or the Antichrist has all of those things that are relevant in his life. There is more than a mental pathology here. There is a spiritual self-idolatry. This man of sin, he's not just sick. I would submit to you, he is evil. Not just sick, but he is evil. So this is it. The man of sin, above all that is worship. Verse 4, above all that is worship. He is called the Antichrist. You've heard of this terminology before?
Yes.
The Antichrist. The point is this. Self-exaltation, which we learn happened to Lucifer, why he fell. Self-exaltation can lead to a desire to be worshipped and regarded as God. The question is this. Is there some grand political conspiracy behind the Antichrist? Revelation 13. You knew we would get into Revelation tonight, didn't you? You assumed it walking in the door. You did, yes or no? Revelation 13. Revelation 13. We'll make sure everyone gets there. It's going to be the last book in the Bible. Revelation 13. We're going to take a little bit closer look at this Antichrist character that we're learning about. And I would just submit to you this. The man of sin exalts himself above all that is worship. And that is the core issue of his sin problem. Like Satan, he wants to acquire the worship that belongs to God alone. And that is why he is called the Antichrist. Anti in Antichrist means instead of. The Antichrist doesn't openly oppose God. He simply attempts to replace him. Which I would submit to you is even worse. Yeah. We're in Revelation 13. We're learning about this character. Revelation 13 and verse 1. Then I stood on the sand of the sea and I saw a beast. A what?
Beast.
A beast rising up out of the sea. What does a beast represent? A kingdom, and a sea represents people. So we have this kingdom that's coming up out of this mass of people. We'll study that in a little more detail, but those are sort of the context to that. We're in verse 1 still. Having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth was like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power. The what?
Dragon.
The dragon gave him his power. Who did the dragon give his power to?
This beast.
This beast. Good. We're tracking. He gave him his power, his throne, and his great authority. And I saw one of his head, and it had been mortally wounded. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed the beast. Man, this is incredible. I wish we could go through this more, but we can't. We're in verse 4. And I saw one of the heads, and it had been, verse 4. So they worshiped, what did they do? They worshipped who?
The dragon.
The dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to make this man make war with him? Now, here's what we've got. We've got this beast that comes up. Who gives him its power?
The dragon.
The dragon. Now, who is it that worships this beast? The people. Now, here it is. If Satan came into this room tonight, appeared to us visually, had a sign around his neck and said, worship me, would anyone bow down to it?
No.
Certainly not in this room because we have the knowledge of the Bible, but let's just say if we open it up to all of Dodge Center, would anyone worship Satan if he came visually, appeared to us, and just had a sign that said, worship me?
Possibly.
All right, possibly. Possibly. But a small number, yes?
Yes.
Maybe 0.0002%. Who knows what it would be? So there may be some, but you're not going to get worship from the masses.
That's right.
So here's what's happening. The beast, the dragon, who you can look in Revelation, the dragon is Satan. That's in your notes, you can look at that. The dragon is Satan. So Satan is propping up this Antichrist in an attempt to be worshipped. Did you catch it?
Yes.
You tracking with me?
Yeah.
Satan is not just going to appear and say, worship me, because it's not going to have any effect, or it's going to have minimal effect. But if he props up some Antichrist figure, makes it appear as if it is good, if it is great, people will worship it, when all reality they're worshiping the beast, the dragon. They're worshiping the dragon, which is Lucifer, behind it. We've got to guard our minds so that we don't worship the Antichrist, because in all reality we are worshiping Satan.
Right.
To answer the question and the problem of pain, we can't just look at what has happened to me or what has happened to my family members. We'll get an understanding of that, but we've got to guard our minds so that we don't worship the person who originated all the evil.
That's right.
He props up the Antichrist. So why? What's in it for the Antichrist? Actually, let's get to our point. Sometimes I just get ahead of myself. Yep. The point is this. There's a spiritual conspiracy behind the Antichrist. What does Satan get out of it? Worship. Worship. You can go through Revelation 13 and verse 4 that we read. They worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. They worshiped Satan who gave authority to the Antichrist. In Revelation 13, 4, 8, 12, 15, and Revelation 14, 9, and 11, it says that they worshiped him, they worshiped him, they worshiped him, they worshiped him. They worshiped him, the dragon who gave authority to the beast. The Antichrist is a conduit through which Satan can receive worship. Their diabolical duo, mutual back-scratching, serving each other for self-serving purposes. 2 Corinthians 11 and verse 14. Satan is making his identity making his identity unknown, while carrying out his purpose of unserving God's throne. The point is this: Satan disguises his identity in his propping up of the Antichrist. Now the question that we're back to, sort of a closed parenthesis there. Incidentally, we're going to get a lot more into these beasts. We're going to get a lot more into some of these things that we've just taken a surface look at. So you're not going to want to miss the coming up meetings. But I just wanted to add that parenthesis, because you really can't answer those questions without guarding your mind and warning yourself of what the beast is really capable of. So we're asked this question: why does God allow this? Matthew 4. One of the most interesting, you should never really use the word most, but an interesting account between Satan and Jesus. Matthew 4 and verse 1. You there? Yes or no? Yes. Matthew 4 verse 1 and 9. Actually, write this down. Matthew 4 1 through 9. We're going to have you read this tonight, or tomorrow, or sometime before we meet again. Matthew 4, 1 through 9. You've got it written down. You're going to read it. This is where Satan tempts Jesus. What does he do? He tempts Jesus. Now, let's actually just go through this real quick, and then I want to pose a couple hypothetical questions to you. The first temptation. Jesus is out in the wilderness. He's been there. He's without food. And here Lucifer, this who's now become Satan, approaches him. And does anyone know what was the first temptation that he tried to tempt Jesus with? Turn the bread to food, appetite. The stones to bread, appetite. He came to Jesus who was hungry, who had been without food for quite some time, and said, "Listen, Jesus, I mean, you created the world in 7 days, 6 days. Wouldn't it be easy for you to just take this stone and turn it into a loaf of bread?" And what does Jesus do? Get away from me. Get behind me. The second one, he comes to Jesus, and what does he do? Anyone know? Second temptation?
Fall off the temple. Jump off the temple.
Jump off the temple, jump off the mountainside, wherever they're at. Jump off and have the angels catch you. A very facetious act. Just jump off. Have it happen. And what does Jesus do? No. And then finally, the last one, what does Satan ask Jesus to do? The third temptation. Worship me. Worship me and I'll give you everything. Now let me ask this question. Could Satan give that to Jesus in the first place?
No.
Such quick answers. That might be a good question to put in the box. My question is this. 3 temptations. I would submit to you we see the height of arrogance in the third temptation. A created being saying, "Worship me." Now let me ask just by show of hands. Did anyone ever have an ant farm growing up? Actually did, but a few people. Now, what if you cared for these ants, if you put them all in, you got the family just right, and things were good, and you gave food to them? Could you imagine if an ant asked you to bow down and worship you? Would that make any sense at all?
No.
That would be somewhat the height of arrogance for an ant to do. Now, obviously, that's very hypothetical and obviously impossible, but here it is. We have Lucifer, this created being, asking God who created him to worship him. Can it get much worse than that? I would submit to you it is the height of arrogance. Now, let me ask you 2 hypothetical questions. Let's say that Jesus knew that was going to happen. Jesus knew that the 3 temptations were going to come. He anticipates it. He knows it. He's in the wilderness. And rather than even let the 3 questions come out, the 3 temptations come out, he snaps his finger and Lucifer is destroyed. How would we feel about that?
You fear him.
You fear Jesus or God. You fear him. Yeah. But Jesus can come to you and say, well, it was going to happen. 3 temptations. I know it's going to happen. Would you be okay with that?
No.
Let me ask you another question then. Let's just move past that. Let's go to the first temptation. Let's say Jesus comes to him, tempts him with the food because he's hungry, tries to get him to turn the bread into stone, and immediately he says, "No, I'm not going to do that." Poof, destroys him. Would you be okay with that?
No.
Probably not. Why not?
Good question.
You'd question. Here's the point. We have to be able to see evil for what it is. God has to take the time for the wheat and the tares to grow together so that the wheat can see the tares for what it is. He can't just come along and destroy it. Get rid of all the evil. Get rid of all the bad things that happen to you or I. Get rid of it all because we will have questions for eternity. If he would have stopped it at that one temptation, he could have easily done it. Could have snapped his fingers, gone, never to be seen from again, never to be heard from again. But you and I would have had questions by the grace of God if we're living in eternity forever. We would have questions forever to question God if he was loving or if he was trusting. So God allows evil to be seen for what it is. He takes the time for all the temptation. so that we can see the height of